Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and germs, anything that passes for a lady, anything that passes for a gentleman. My name is James PFP. This is the Banjocast. We have returned.
Little tune now we're going to try by Cream, a song called Outside Woman Blues.
There's a reason for this. I really like this track. I like the song anyway. Decent cover, a couple little small mistakes, but I'm learning the song from listening to it. So while this is playing, I'll load Blender in the background. Trying to keep the memory restrictions and requirements for this entire session as low as possible. Bennett. Little mistake there, eh? Tempted to try this right now. Doable. Here's where I was working on this here map idea. I need to do some outlines for some spots, and I need in other areas to do. I'll be using what's called a path. So where the streets and stuff are, I'll be doing those differently. They'll overlay on top of it, like areas like this, where the box cuts over. I could be a little more precise. Actually, before I get any further, I could be more precise about this curve. Here's how I'm going to do it. W, subdivide, get another point, grab that with G. And really, that's what it does, right? I don't need to see the end window for the time being. A bit of background audio going on here. She turned the music off and let you listen. Need to see how this blends right over to the edge of the screen now, because I've gotten rid of all of these like dialogues and stuff. Turn off the other one with T. Then I'm straight in the editing mode. Generally, I don't need to see that stuff. Me myself, I like the less cluttered view. Right? And this one maybe there. So between those two now, we'll subdivide one more. So between these two on the end, X. Ooh, I don't need to extrude it. I'll grab that again. X the edge, and I'll delete those two. If I just deleted the vertices, it would have done the same thing. So I've been selecting by vertex so far, but down here on the bottom, you can see that I can select by vertex, or by edge, or by face. If I wanted to, I could select that edge directly, right? Delete the edge, select that edge, that edge. If I like an edge like this, I can still subdivide it, right? Subdivide, now I got two edges. So that's another nice thing about Blender. It totally does the proper deal there. So what I'm thinking is, I get the grass area pretty much. I can call that all grass for the sake of this map.
And a bit of new material tonight too, as well, some stuff you've never heard before.
But then there's this one. I'm gonna get rid of that edge. And I am looking for the grass here.
Song I wrote a few years back.
Actually, I might change the music in the background here now. I was thinking about something else which I could not download and play, but the bar where I recorded this is a bar which I frequently play. One of the neat things about that bar is they've started releasing audio from the last 10 or 15 years of the bar being open. As a consequence, there's a whack of live recordings that have been done down there by different bands, local and otherwise. Some of them are pretty cool. Yeah, it just closed the loop for me there. When I hit control and if I right click, it gets the whole loop there. If I hit F right now, it would make a face out of that while closing the line. Things come back to you real quick in Blender. Is this too loud? Is this too loud? I'll bring it back. I should check what my stream is saying. Sometimes it doesn't like music being done. So as I say, I might well go to Distortion tonight. Not the bar to go down there, but I mean go to Distortion, the website, and start using that as something for background music. I think that might be a good idea. This one can be joined that way. So if I control... Oh. So there's another face there. I'm going to draw another one going down to here, get the rest of this grass. Drawing the line there. And there's one, and there's one, and there's one, there's one. Here's a tricky part. What I should do is subdivide this line for the sake of that one, So these two are blending right into one another now. It thinks that it's one big long, one face with this seam down the middle, but I can set these two different materials, one group to one material, one group to another, so I can actually color all of this before we're done too. Looks like this runs under the highway to over here. Is that a cul-de-sac of some kind? Gonna get this one for this. Shift duplicate. Put it around the corner.
Thank you guys. God damn. We're gonna try another original now. This song called Blame.
Blame's a good little track. Fun to listen to. I like the other one better though. You Weren't Ready, I think it's called. I like a lot of these tracks. Don't get me wrong. X to delete the edge. Excuse me. Does that. So turn this off now. We're starting to see that the map is filling in block at a time, feature at a time. I'm only looking at areas that I might need detail in for 3D purposes. Doubt I'm going to need it up here. Park is up here. I want to put that one in too. The center of the map where I've got the cursor placed at the moment, that is 4th Street. It's 4th, Main, Water, Market. Yeah, cause I got no one to blame. Thinking I should do because I got this gray area back here, and then it's implied that it's over on this side of the map, but it's bordering on this one. So what I should do probably is to use this one to expand it. Like what I'll do is get in selection mode again. Start going around the outside edge of the map. And if it overlaps a little bit, I'll make sure that this one's underneath. Seems like a lot of... Well, it has to go up to the edge of the 4th, right? But it gets all of this specifically different area, the main mall area. That last one, it may go all the way to here. It would be better because that's gray underneath, right? Anything that's underneath gray is going to be underneath. This last one, again. Going deep here, was the event and all this happening in the world? Do you think it's the end game of the string pullers? That's an easy one, actually. They would much rather that we considered the government to be parents, the ones who should be taking care of us, and that they don't want to. They want us to start losing taste for the time-honored understanding that the government should fear the people, not the other way around. That's what I think they're trying to reverse here, is that they still fear the people. They feel confident enough to do some things right in plain sight, thinking, the people are too stupid. We might fear them, but they're too stupid to understand. I don't think they're that stupid anymore, though. I think the internet is going to make a lot more people educated, whether they like it or not. Same as I said last year after the election, Hilljack, after the American election, which I didn't vote in it. I'm in Canada, right? After the election, I said, I have a funny feeling there's going to be a hell of a lot more truthers after this election than even after 9/11. It's unreal to think that it takes the election to make more truthers, but that's what's going to happen. And I can already see it happening. I already see it happening. It screws with people's heads too much to have to admit that I think it screws with people's heads too much to have to admit that Trump was once a Democrat. He's not the neocon that the rest of them are. That's the thing that's what gets down to the whole end agenda thing. I was also acutely aware during the election. I'm going to sneeze here. I think I've got to be careful. I was acutely aware during the election that I thought, how to say this, like, it seemed possible to me that Trump could be working with Clinton. Why did I think that? It's because Clinton's camp was actually giving him a bit of promotion at the very beginning. They had Bernie Sanders really to worry about, so they were promoting Trump to make the big bad guy seem so obvious that it needed someone like Hillary to come up and stand up against it. But part of me still kind of thinks Trump is playing on the inside a little bit too much. When he did his inauguration speech, he said, the very first thing he said in the speech was, "For too long now, a relatively small number of people in Washington, a secretive group of people in Washington, have been, behind the scenes doing their thing." And I thought to myself, no, if he can't offer proof for exactly who and what he means when he says that, he's either admitting that he knows this to be true because he's been in those meetings, those types of meetings. He's been one of those few before. Or he's never been one of the few, but he knows who they are and he can't say who they are. It's one or the other. How else could he in good faith really make that kind of statement about... And it was in the whole draining the swamp type stuff. To some degree, he's on the inside. Yes. But he's at least more respected for being, for lack of better terms, a nativist or an isolationist in a classical American tradition than any of the neocons is. So he's a better choice. Even Democrats have to admit he used to be a Democrat. He does at least care about, common man or individuals or people who are willing to work, yes. I mean, he sees it from the point of view of a capitalist who's not done bad by the system itself. Why should he say that it's done him bad, right? They say, at least I don't get fucked over by alpha male, not a cock, right? Yeah, well, there you go. I'm not too worried about that stuff either anymore. The whole disrespecting and the worry about it's his inside info that they fear, and the fact that he's been really, really vocal for a number of years and he's been consistent. He's never been in an elected office. He's untouchable in that sense. The more stuff he says, I don't want the public purse to pay for, the better he looks to everybody on the right wing. Every libertarian starts to cheer for him. You can't lose. You cannot lose in 2020. They lied so much the last election cycle to try to make him look like something that he wasn't. Then they had a big trouble. Oh my God, we're going to have to fake every poll. We're going to have to fake every poll from now until eternity because we can't tell the truth of what the people really think about him. We got to make it look this is what they think. They can't actually admit what it is. That's what got me with it. And I think that's what it really comes down to with Trump in particular. He's not a bad statesman. I have to admit, he is not a bad statesman. I couldn't believe it, actually. I was looking at Trump's tax plan because it wasn't getting talked about here in the media in Canada. What he wanted to do with his taxation plan. And I started hearing what he was saying, If you're below a certain thing, you don't pay nothing. And I'm like, wow, 44 grand a year for the basic exemption. That's nuts. So then I went and got my Canada tax program and realized it was exactly the same thing that Trudeau and the crowd did here. If Trudeau was a globalist, the first thing Trudeau did to reform the taxes or to change taxes here was to change the base exemption up to 44 grand, the same as the Americans did. Yeah, me too. I would much rather actions. You ever heard the story of the Canadians who were volunteering for the UN peacekeepers in Rwanda? When it comes to actions, they were totally prevented from doing anything to stop what they saw was happening around them. The UN rules prevented them from doing it. They would have taken action, but they were told and ordered not to. Even the general on the ground was being ordered, don't do anything. You got the right to do something, but don't. Or you're expected to do something, but don't. Right? It's retarded. I need to see where the last part of this one is, so I'm going to go to overview and see how far back I've got to go here. Let's go back here. So I've got the point all the way to here. Sound like the Charlottesville cops. Man, it was funny watching them on that extended video last night, because that's the first time I've seen them, like, sat down and actually watched that nice and carefully, like. And the cops are, like, in every opportunity, they're trying to shut people down. Every friggin' opportunity. Okay, I put a point here to get that part of the road. All the rest of it is in this block, so the last point other than that is there. I can F join those and to make sure that this one's going to be on the bottom. So that gives me all of the gray area on that part of the map. Don't really need it on this side so much. It's only because this is joined to this park piece that I did it. Blue hats seem to have that as a standing order. Yeah, blue hats, they do, but they don't. It depends on the situation they're in. In Rwanda, they were given a specific set of instructions, and then restrictions were placed on that, and more restrictions, I think. That's how I understood it. It got to the point where they were being told that simply, if anything in the compound is being attacked, the UN compound, designated compound, which you are guarding, retreat to that, and if anybody attacks that physically, hold fire and ask for instructions. That's the way it came down to. If they're fired upon, they ought to be weapons free. It's peacekeeping, right? Peacemaking, peacekeeping. Arguably, it's kind of difficult to keep peace in the middle of a war zone. Or if there's a full-on feud or civil war of any kind going on, the thought that you're going to be able to keep the peace strikes me as a little bit. Guy who was in control of his name was Romeo Dallaire. He's from France, or not from France, he's from Quebec. Romeo Dallaire. He had a hard time with it. He was a real well understood and respected general in the Canadian military, and then volunteered basically for that position. I think he was Governor General afterward for a long while, Romeo Dallaire. But that's the guy who was in Rwanda, and he didn't scratch his back well or make him feel good about what he had done, to know that he had basically capitulated with groups that were killing one another, but under orders. Like if he had it his druthers, he'd have seen a lot less distinctions, I think. Would have been simpler in some ways. Somalia, Rwanda, several countries were all going through the same problems. Still are. The Congo's been fighting a civil war for. Let alone the whole, what happens when we develop. Trump is an interesting study, though. I was glad that he won. I was glad to know that I could see it coming. He's going to win. Whatever the more these people lie about what their polls are saying, the more we all know they're lying. So that did not bother me. I actually know a math professor here in the local university. I'd met him a number of years ago during the whole Occupy Wall Street occurrence. That was 2011. And he's a smart guy. He's a really, really smart guy. Like I say, a math professor. Not just a professor, a doctor. And he's in the area of mathematics, which is not theoretical, but the question is, like, how important is it? He's in the area which doesn't, it's not like he sits down and works out, well, I'm going to teach students how to work out interest rates or something. He's not into practical statistics or anything like that. He's into topography and geometry. He's into higher level, even idealistic math, right? Some of them want to say transcendent. Whatever. Anyway, a day or two after the American election, on his Facebook feed. He posts up a one-line Facebook update. Stop normalizing Trump. And from a mathematician, that made me laugh and laugh and laugh and laugh. Like, it might have been, if it wasn't right at the time of the election, it was around the time of the inauguration. So it was building up to that kind of a thing. Stop normalizing Trump's what he said. So I messaged him back and he never did answer the question. What do you mean by that? What do you mean stop normalizing him? We should stop pretending that the president is not an important position. That's not to point to the fact that he is president is not normalizing. What do you mean normalized? He's using mathematical terms in a political fashion totally out of context. And he should know better than that, the fucking math. He's a friggin' doctor of math. Like, that's what gets me with the left wing at the moment. He identifies as a left winger, but he plays stupid for the sake of the political surrounding. The milieu is the word for it. The people which are around. And the more he does that, the less I trust him. Because it means, at the end of the day, he won't tell the truth. He won't tell the truth even if he works out the mathematics right in front of you. That I can't stand. Then I may not abide. The dude can abide many things, but he won't abide that. A little bit of tunage in the background. Make my way around the map here. It won't be long, and this should be done. I might even delete that last set of lines that I did there and look at putting down a longer one. I need to do some curves there. It's funny though that this damn math prof, he knows the same as I do. It does matter who the president is, even though we're in Canada. We're living in a province, for example, that has oil wealth as part of its income, part of its actual provincial income, at our state level, and it's a really significant amount of the income. We got several large hydroelectric projects here too, so energy has been the major export for the province ever since the 1960s. Hydro first, and now oil. Excuse me. Actions, not words. Damn, man. I think some words are worth listening to. Some words really do give you fair warning. That's why they're good, right? Same as like when you agree to have a parley with someone. That's at least honorable words. It should be. But not everybody considers it that way. I need to look at this again here. Top down. Good old Romeo Dallaire, man, and it really was one in a million when it came to doing the old, not just the Canadian military, but Somalia in particular, Somalia and Rwanda. I tell you what else is funny, is that before Trudeau won the election, I kind of knew ahead of time that he was going to win it too. But then again, I knew that before he even announced that he was going to run. Let me make clear why. For 2-3 years before he finally announced, yeah, I am going to run, the media was bombarding us with the idea, what if Justin Trudeau? What if Justin Trudeau? What if Justin Trudeau? It took years to do it. But when he finally announced, I'm running, yeah, I knew he was no different than Obama. He was controlled by the actual state itself to be put in there. His father was the prime minister. Justin doesn't have a goddamn political bone in his body, nor does he have the inclination for the work. He's a puppet. And look who he gets all the pictures with. He gets pictures with Clinton, he gets pictures with Podesta, he gets pictures with Soros, he gets pictures with everybody. He gets pictures with the Aga Khan, he gets pictures with this. Christ almighty. Government of Canada gives Clinton friggin' $20 million. What the hell? What the heck? That don't make any sense. Why the heck is our government paying them? Of all the crooks in the world, we had to pay to Clinton. Crook, that's giving it easy. So yeah, you don't have to like what I think. I don't have to care either. I mean, in a sense, it's my opinion, and I'm welcome to it. I'm Canadian. Like Macron, yeah. I haven't looked too carefully at Macron either. Like in terms of how it is that they tie into any larger number, like larger patterns. Is it because they're related to this one or that one or what? Like, oh, it's their parents. Oh, I see. Justin Trudeau's father is the whole reason that Trudeau was even marketable. Trudeau's father had a lot of socialist, like left wing credit, and still does. Trudeau Jr. is a fucking ski bum, if you pardon my French. Un ski bum. His wife is his keynote. Oh. You ever heard of the St. Pierre and Miquelon affair, Hilljack? I'm going to turn off the music a little for this. The St. Pierre and Miquelon affair occurred in December of 1941. St. Pierre and Miquelon is a little set of islands just south of this island. And it's owned as in it's a national territory for France. Still is. It's been a national territory for France since 1713 Treaty of Utrecht. So in 1941, 2-3 weeks after Pearl Harbor, the Free French forces under de Gaulle and a series of other generals or admirals were discussing, hey, we got to start taking back some of these North American French territorial holdings. They're all currently being held by Vichy France. They're all pro-Axis. St. Pierre and Miquelon, 50, well, not even 50, less than 10 or 20 nautical miles south of the island here, for example, had a pro-Axis governor whose wife was German by nationality, from descent, right? And Vichy France had appointed them since the time of the French occupation. So the various governments in the North American sphere, I mean, number one, the United States, because of the Monroe Doctrine, starting at the beginning of the 20th century. The United States didn't feel, or at least different aspects of the different parts of the United States government didn't think that was a good idea, so they tried to stop it from happening. And then when they didn't, this French plan went off. Cordell Hull, Secretary of State, started to say, no, boys, Free France, let go of that and give it back to Vichy France. That should be Vichy France's, right? Even though they declare war against Germany, they were still saying, put it back the way that it was at the State Department level. Why is this? The reason is that St. Pierre and Miquelon is where all the transatlantic wireless cables go to get to Europe, other than the ones that go to Britain. The ones that go to Britain go through Newfoundland. The ones that go to the continental Europe go through St. Pierre and Miquelon. That's why it was an important thing to hold. Anyway, it was a place where U-boats could use for a base to refuel, rearm. It was a place where there was a wireless transmitter as well as wired transmission cables for telegraph. Really important holding. Cordell Hull wanted to give it back. Roosevelt said no. We'll let him keep it. And Charles de Gaulle made his first win in the as Free French commander, even though he wasn't involved with it, didn't plan it, wasn't there. Cordell Hall is pretty much the question you got to ask. Why would Cordell Hall have wanted to have this, stable line of communication back to the continental Europe? Because they were, to some degree, they were making deals there, right? That was their main communication method, at least with France, with Vichy France, and perhaps through to Switzerland or wherever else. The rest of France, of course, was occupied France. Greater Reich. Interesting period, that one. It was called the St. Pierre and Miquelon affair. I'll write the name down here. Ooh. Practically, I think it was December 23 through something like that. So in a way, if you can take, if transatlantic cables and wireless transmission is social media, I just put air quotes around that. If that's social media, then this is a very old game. Where do the strings get pulled and who's pulling them? Yeah, it's an interesting thing to study. To see who was doing what at that particular period of time. I'm not necessarily a huge fan of FDR anymore either. I don't think he did. I don't think the sun rose and set in his asshole or anything. But Cordell Hall was the one who was saying, "No, boys, we should stop. We shouldn't do this. We were going to end up." I mean, they'd already declared war, de facto, against Germany anyway, because Japan. So Japan was one day, Germany the day after. And it was 2-3 weeks before this occurred anyhow. Really interesting. I'm going to take a chance that this won't... Oh, this is a really chancy one, though. Ooh, I won't do it. I'll listen to something later. I'll try to keep nattering on. I got an old media device there, chock full of music too. I should probably try to... I'd have to find another USB plug. Nah. Too much stop and go. I'm thinking Market Street and all the rest of it up here is going to be great. So I got this one done. It's only this one down here now. Then I can do this overhead highway and the rail line, which has the split in it. I don't really need to be that terribly... I don't need to be too terribly detailed about it. So right now I'm thinking that this plane, which I've got arranged underneath or aligned underneath this image of the map. The image, by the way, is a background image. It's not a texture of any kind. I'm using it just as a guide in orthographic view. I'll also use this for measurement purposes. I can set the blender units and the scale of this map to whatever. I can make this... I need this to be 75 meters from this point to this point. And I think it's another 20 this way. From that point to that point. That puts it in scale with this map, and then that also means that I can measure distances reliably with the icons on the mini-map. The distances that they travel will relate to actual distance, and convert that to feet after the fact or something like that. I'm going to continue operating in meters for the sake of my own head and simplicity's sake. Strange to think that it is equally 75 meters, so just is that a little more than 75 yards, or... Can't remember now. Okay, so this one over here is really on both sides of the tracks. I think I'll try to get all of that one in one long fell swoop. Shift D to copy, or to create a duplicate. Shift D of that particular block. And when I get into edit mode, well, before I do that, I'll rotate it so that some of the points are already close to where I want them. And because I know that most of this shape is not what I'm going to want in the end, I'm going to hit C for circle select and select the points on this part of the curve that I won't be wanting. X, delete vertices. Was that a bump? What the heck? Thought I saw a pop up that time. I'll put this, ooh. Interesting. There's another one there then, okay. Put this one underneath where the road is going to be. I'll join it up when I come around. That's the first part of the curve. Here's the second. I'm actually going to get a curved line in here yet. I mean, I'll put one in when the time comes. Grab to move this just a little farther. It's pretty much where it needs to be. Here's one. Using control with a left click. Using shift and middle mouse to get around the side. Control, left click. Don't have to stick to this or anything. Doesn't matter. It's beyond the point. Anywho. I can even bring this one like square or something. Using shift to make it lock down. G and Y was the one I did. G and X to bring it in this way. Shift to fine tune it. Grabbing the point, control click to continue the line with vertices. Various vertexes. Wondrous and sundry. I'm not going to worry about this little in and out back access road. I'm going to merely get this part. Density parking over here, huh? Or is it private? I don't know. Private probably for the businesses. Over to this side, kind of same deal. Going to be under the road, so I'm going to actually make this look like something that's not true. Oh, right. That's where it joins. It's over here. F to complete the line and make this into a closed surface piece. Doesn't have any buildings that I need. Beyond the intersection, this one right here. We were really, really close to U-boats in the Second World War. I don't think anyone today realizes how close we are. That even a Type 7 or Type 9 diesel-run U-boat, diesel electric, could make it from Germany to here, and then all the way down the eastern seaboard too. Distances aren't that great. It's insane. Especially if you go to the north first. If you go north, like past Iceland, is really short. So that's why that whole St. Pierre and Miquelon affair is particularly striking, because the method of warfare has changed. Stealth was once the thing. Oh wait, stealth is still the thing, but the method of delivery for stealth has changed. And good luck trying to like hide your. I guess hide your noise is not so easy. It wasn't so easy then either, but you could. And the whole silent running thing. Using fine tune there. Trying to think about what buildings will be and won't be necessary. I'm thinking just having the block on the map is the main thing, so that roads are partly defined by necessity through the negative space. So once I don't see the map, or once I don't see the image of the map, I still have the map. And now features on the blocks themselves kind of help define it. So when I'm going to render this, what I'll have to do is to set a bunch of different materials, is how Blender thinks of it. Each of the different materials will have a slightly different color, or have very different colors to indicate what's on the map, where things are. For example, the parking lots, parking garages. So like that's parking. I can select this from the top down view too. Using this way, I could think of not that one as parking, no, but this one. I need to draw this one in. This one is parking. That one's parking. That one's parking. That one. Here, look. Then if I go back into this, like this, all this could be colored blue or something to indicate that's parking areas. Put a P on it. So now is probably a really good time to look at the camera, which I have hidden, I think. All the different blocks that have been done so far. Here's the camera. I want it selectable, I want it shown. Ooh. If I hit keypad 0, I get a camera view. And the camera's physical location in space and the type of camera that it is. Well, right now we're in orthographic. So it sees a representation which is controllable. It has no perspective lines effect. There'll be no foreshortening. There'll be no vanishing points. Everything is proper angles as presented. And I have a scale, orthographic scale here, which would allow me to zoom in. And then if I want to pan, I physically change the location in the X and Y value there and the transform in the window itself to pan and scan through it. Both these things could be keyframed the same as anything else in Blender. So I'll hover over it and hit the I key. Sets the color of this to be yellow. I'll show what it looks like. Sets one for all three of the values. I can clear keyframes too. When it's keyframed, there'll be a yellow mark added to the timeline. And my plan is, now that I've got a timeline that shows most of the major events and is as long as Ford Fisher, I'm going to do Ford first. And we'll be starting over here and figuring where it is that he starts his walk along, and where the places where the challenger, where we can say for sure the challenger seems to be. I could put that on the map too. Probably have a different way of displaying it for the anticipated route that he takes to get around the road that he goes under, and I have to draw that in yet. And you can see here too how there's like a faked part where the road is going to cover over the top, and I need to add in another little block here maybe. That'll be the last one. That seems pretty good though. So I go to the top-down view and go back to orthographic. I don't need to see this camera until much, much later. In fact, I don't need to see anything else other than what I'm immediately doing. North Mountain subdivisions. Cool. Let's find a good shape for starting the subdivisions. Well, I'll use this one. This will do nicely. Has a corner and everything. I'm going to skip over the road going into the parking area. Most of this is in the background, so it's not necessary information, I think. Other than the fact that it establishes there's roads nearby, and sometimes when the map pans around one way or zooms in or out, there'll be areas which are better having some data represented than none. Pretending that the map doesn't have as much, pretending the map is too small in essence. I need to delete the edge. Control here from that point which is selected. go to here. I'm looking at the curve in the road above it. Like I could make this road very, very jagged looking this way. And I'll have to move these two in here, which was only sketched in before, basically. It's very much like Google SketchUp used to be, I think, this one. Though I like Blender better, I have to admit. Control L to get the linked vertices. Shift D to duplicate them. Or X. I don't need, I'm still in edit mode for this shape. So now I'm going to just control, when none of them are selected, I'll control click, get one. And then start defining this block from scratch using control, holding control. To get all the way over to here. And we can guess that the block goes to about there. Joins up. Looks like I guessed a little bit wrong. Grab, holding shift. Actually, I was holding control there. It snaps to the grid. Holding shift. I can follow the line of the block on both sides and reliably estimate where that might be. Both are now the same unit. Last thing is perhaps a couple of the main roads which are going to be used. They have curves in them that I want to overlay slightly or maintain. This one is the real main one that needs to be done because it needs to be a surface applied that's elevated over the road underneath. So I want any icon which passes underneath there to go underneath it. Oop. If I A to deselect there. Curves are funny things. Curves are calculated differently. I have a cursor here, a 3D cursor. I'll put it there. Going to add a curve. I don't want a path, I actually want a Bezier curve. Speaking Français. This curve is currently like east to west, so to speak. I'm going to turn it north to south for a minute. Grab it over here. Put it to about the midpoint of the road, or figure where that might be. Up and down, right? About halfway. Think of it like a bow and a bow and arrow. About there. I'm trying to string this. What will end up happening when I scale it up? Right? So there's a center point where the curve is off of. I'll take care of that in a second. This is the way the curve wants to run right now. Where the arrows are pointing, if I was to animate something on the curve, it would go from this point to that point automatically. It just follows the curve. If I rotate, if I select this with right click and then rotate the curve at the end, it bends the curve automatically. Unlike something with one of those vertexes. Here's the real beauty of the curve though. I'm zoomed way back so that I see the whole part of that map. I'm going to zoom in a bit, get a little more detail. Select the back curve, it's already selected. Roll it so that it matches the early point, but it seems like it's a little too powerful in this direction. I'm going to grab just this side, grab it, bring it back. I'll do the same thing to this one. Grab it and fairly bring it in. The curve still doesn't look very good though, right? It doesn't have enough, basically, resolution. We were subdividing the last time. This will work here too. Adds a new point in the middle. Just one. But I want that one, say, about there. And then between this one and that one, I want another one. And that should be enough to get us around the turn. I'll start with this point and start by maybe doing that with it. Grab this one again, just the side, bring it back. Ooh, a little too much. This don't work well enough, then I select those 2 points, like properly select the middle points of them. W, subdivide again, put the one in the middle right on the turn. S, scale it down. R, rotate it so that the line, if I move it over here a little, is the optimum distance on both ends from the road. And you'll get the center line. Do this right. Maybe that's still scaled a little bit too much, so I'll scale it back a bit. This herringbone pattern starts to look a little more right. So now I'll try to replicate that from one end to the other. Here's this one. Wants more close together, I think. Maybe this one should come out this way more. This one seems to actually be off center a bit, but maybe not. Maybe that's the way I've got the curve after, right? How about that one? That's its after controller here. This one seems to be asking for a little bit of a move and a shift backward. First one seems pretty good. Now we got the curve defining the road. And this is the overhead highway, I guess. You can call it that, a divided highway by the look of it. Big enough for. Similarly, that end of the road. Now there's another, perhaps faster way of doing the same thing. Since we got two here at the beginning and the first part of the road is really straight, I'm going to grab and lock it to the X. Put it pretty much on that point. Hit the tab key to get it in selection mode. And bring it all the way over here. Get that one. Rotate it so that it's straight to. If I want more detail on the inside here, I might subdivide it once, maybe even subdivide it a couple times. So that there's lots of even spaces, and there is much like a herringbone pattern there. That doesn't hurt. But now what I want to do is I select from the last point. All right, it's right there. Now holding control, I can continue. Get up to there. Oh, Control Z. I did that one wrong. I wasn't holding Control. I was holding Shift by mistake. And sometimes Blender tries to figure out where the curve might be going. You might have to bring it back a tiny bit. You might have to adjust a handle on one side or the other. You can see here that there's a sense that the road has a planned turn to the left, but also like an indicated turn to the left. You could continue straight, but flow of traffic would normally be this way, I would think. So that's Water Street. What am I going to do with those? Because they're curves, we can treat them any number of different ways. I'm going to go perspective for a minute. I haven't named either one of these yet either. So Bezier curve number 1. Maybe I should maybe I should actually return to this so that I can see what the road's called. 9th Street. And this one, Water Street E. Now the actual data for this is still what the original name was. One's a Bezier curve, 1, 1, 2. We're going to make the shape 3D. It could be 2D, but 3D will work. Preview render. Doesn't need to be too high res. I'm going to put up 3. Probably should do that with this other one right away. That saves memory. Turning down the preview. Fill deform. Oh, but see how much curves turn into sharp corners? Might need that up around 6, maybe 7. Don't want sharp corners, want curves. 6 would do. That's half of what it was. 7 on the top one. I want it to fill full. It could be front, back, or whatever. Fill full is fine. Fill deformed is fine. Path curve deform, I'm going to turn that off. Twisting, you could actually turn that to nothing if you want. Geometry. Taper object, bevel object, doesn't matter. I can just set a depth to the line this way. But the line is different depths, different places. I think I can also control this separately, but as a function of the but hey, if it was a little bit big, it wouldn't much matter in the areas that it's overlapped. But 43 looks great, even though it's a bit big on the top there. It's the right size up to the areas I need it. If I turn this over into perspective here now, you'll see it's in 4 directions though. It's in 4 dimensions. Sorry, 3. It's because it's been beveled. We can also use a bevel object. Probably be a better idea. We see that how much the bevel is, those 0.43 basically blender units. It's like a radius. The depth, right? If I set that to 0, go to the overhead view, I get my blender cursor here and snap it to the grid. Cursor to grid. I can go to orthographic view for a second too. Maybe move the cursor over a little bit and snap it again. I'm going to get closer to this blender space. I'm going to add one little mesh, a plane. And this plane, when it's first added here, this is its scale and its size. The dimensions are 2 blender units. And its scale is 1. This is what it considers to be 1. What I'm going to do is to try to get something which is a little bit... I can actually fine-tune what the road looks like in short by using this object. I'm going to holding control to snap it. I'm going to move it off here to the side, and then I'm going to give it a name. Road bevel. And the main thing is I only want it to be on wide on one dimension and then short on the other ones. So if I were to scale and hold Y, or hit Y, hold Control, scale until it was about that thick, you could think of that as being the cross section rather than the diamond. And then I could scale it down this way. So it's about half, right? It's at half the original scale X-wise and Z-wise, but it's 0.5 the scale otherwise, which is close to what the bevel object was. Or, yeah, what the beveling was, I should say. Here's this bevel object. Oh, it needs to be a curve. Not to worry. T. Move from animation, physics, grease pencil, tools. See whether or not it'll let me. It needs to be a curve. That's not so bad. See whether or not I can change object. Convert. I know I can convert the other way. I can convert a curve to a mesh. Convert to Alt-C. Curve from mesh. So now road bevel is a curve. Oh, should be. Or did it add a new one? Oh, it says curve. Just reading about Newfoundland white coyotes. Trying to view by mobile. Hey, King B. Is it working? Funny, I had to watch what app and chat with browser. Browser doesn't recognize video. It's at 15 frames a second, maybe. Maybe that's the issue. It's high bit rate, but yet 15. Reading about white coyotes, huh? They've been seeing the red ones here too. There are wolves to the north. Not so much in the province, but definitely in Labrador. Road bevel. It's a proper curve too now, ain't it? Yep. It's a NURBS curve. Oh, right. I have to hold the road. I get the road bevel. Wow. Look how big the road bevel is. Huge, right? If I Control A and apply the scale. Oh, that's not going to work. Control Z. I don't need the road bevel to be that big on the road. It seems awfully big. Oh yeah, start to end. I can choose how far the road is that thick. Eh? Does it fill the caps or not? If I go back over here in perspective, have a look. We see the road is thin now, right? It's at least getting in the right direction. So the last thing to do is to scale this one. And the more detailed the view that I do this in, the easier it would be to do it. Hitting S and scaling it first by eye. The farther back I move my mouse, the more fine-tuned this would be. And now I'm holding Shift. Getting real close and getting it right. Let's have a look at that instead. So it's an elevated road, which I'm going to need to change the depth for. And I think this is the elevated road that meets up with like a ridge line, a hill line up here. So the fact that it's elevated is only at this latter part. Let's look at it from side view. So just so you can see what I'm done here, I'm rotating it down this way to look at it from side view. And like I say, this is the part of the road I want to be elevated. So since I'm not necessarily going to be doing any, all the geography, let's put it that way, all the various parts of the geography, the local geography, I'll at least get this above the road by bumping up. I don't need to lock it on Y. Okay. Grab and on Z. I want to get this above the road this way. I'm just going to lift it directly up off the map so that there's something for the other road to go under. And if I do a 3D map, I'll have to rectify that by actually putting in a contour line up here. This would be straight then. This would be a level roadway. But in the top-down map, you won't necessarily know that it isn't level. It still matches the curves in the top-down map. No way of knowing, right? You only see it in top or in the orthographic if you look at it that way. Only in Newfoundland, hey? Yeah, wouldn't surprise me. You hear any of the Joe Rogan podcasts, Hilljack, when he's been talking about coyotes and coyote culling? Because they have what do you call a bounty here? Bounty on coyotes here, $15 a pelt or something. And yet I hear that's not the thing to do unless the government's going to be paying lots and lots more in the bounty than they expect to. Once again, the government getting thinking they're so smart. Government cheese, as I've heard described before. Cheese, that's good. So road bevel is now this tiny, tiny little object. Part of the reason I think I must have applied the scale and rotation to the wrong thing. Hey, Yanis. Joe says if you kill them, they come back in greater numbers. That causes their populations to explode if you kill them. There's other ways of getting rid of them. I don't know what it is. That's what Joe says anyway. I've no direct proof of that. I found it funny. He said it was like a specific survival trait for coyotes as opposed to wolves. And the reason is if you kill them and they're howling to one another at night, coyote populations respond to missing voices by breeding. Only if you kill the alpha male. Well, do they only have one alpha male for that entire pack? I think they're more individual, same as wolves can be. They go between phases. Sometimes they're loners, sometimes they're pack. It's the communications range. It's the communications that matter, right? The wolves, if you kill them, this doesn't trigger the overpopulation boom, but if you kill a coyote and the coyote pack is listening to one another at night and the voices are missing, that's a survival difference. That's a trait difference between the two subspecies of like wolves, coyotes, dogs, same species, right? Subspecies of the same thing, same types of thing. Only if you kill the alpha male. I don't know about that one. Just like I say, I heard this on Joe. I find it easy to believe, and it's from his hunter buddies. But who do they represent? God only knows, right? Could be anybody. Time for me to get a cigarette and a tea break. What I have here. You can hear it, but only just. I'm getting a little short playlist on the go. Long enough for me to go and get back again. Try to stop the dead air. Let them think that I'm still doing something. Let them think what they will. That's a decent one. Here comes some tunage. 1, 2, 3. I will return. That's like Douglas MacArthur. I shall return. It's called Puff Puff Pass Fernando. Many years it's been since I saw a reefer in your hand. Did you find the bomb, Fernando? That dandy little glass one you got outside of Disneyland. I can see it in your eyes. You wanna try to steal across like the Rio Grande. No, Tommy Chong made it, man. He's not here. It was years ago, Fernando, when we met in Tijuana at a swank resort hotel. Maybe it was Acapulco. You worked the bar, Fernando. You were really well connected to the Zetas, I heard tell. And it was tattooed up and down your arms, that wide variety of chemicals you sell. It was something in the E, I think, but not the drink, Fernando. Drinking mezcal from the bottle straight, the word can wait, Fernando. Though we never thought we would run out of grass. Got a dealer who delivers, man. Guy's got a van, Fernando. Got a dealer who delivers fast, as in the past, Fernando. Are you still awake, Fernando? Would you put me in recovery position if I faint? Am I breathing right, Fernando? 'Cause I feel a little queasy from the smorgasbord we ate. And if you think that it's too early for this song, I'm here to tell you it's too late. Than Fernando. Many hours, many minutes seem to last eternity. And the firelight, Fernando, it was fucking pretty trippy once we dropped the LSD. And then the magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, don't forget the peyote. Got into the nitrous first, my guts done burst, Fernando. Then a big old bag of coca leaves for you and me, Fernando. Though we never thought we would run out of grass. inside 10 miles of that Churchill Square. He's got your dear Fernando. Throws a couple extra papers too in the bag for you, Fernando. 'Cause if I never use my brain again, I could just go ahead and bleach my hair snow white. No, 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 I don't smoke it no more. It's literally a 5-minute track. That's perfect. Awesome. I think I'll keep that. That's very good. It is an ill wind that blows no minds. Carrie Thornley, ladies and gentlemen. Carrie Thornley. Source of that last still image. Never heard of Carrie Thornley? We've got plenty of time to talk about Carrie Thornley. Carrie Thornley, if you've never heard of Carrie Thornley, wrote a book about Lee Harvey Oswald before he was a household name. That's who Carrie Thornley is. Anyhow, I'm waiting for a cup of tea to warm up. So I'm ears in the background here. Don't need to be wearing the old headset for a second or two. Also like to say, and I'll type it in the chat here so anyone who comes in can see it. If anyone has Mumble, I'd be interested in setting up a group chat or call-in. This very evening, I mean. So if so, let me know in the chat and we'll proceed from there. Pick a server or something. I shall return. Got a little more music in the background here too. Question: do you do a band? Yeah, I got an isolated room here in the back for filming purposes as well as use of life use and stuff. And one of the many things that it allows me to do is to isolate noise from the rest of the house, which is an interesting small problem. Not a big problem. Not really big. Not a big problem at all. But tonight the noise is actually quite interesting noise, because the other housemate, one of the housemates here, the other housemate at the moment, also does tattoo work. So he's got people coming from time to time to get their tats done. Sometimes fixed, sometimes new. Always interesting. Top orthographic to top perspective. There's the perspective on the shading on this thing. Still looks pretty good. I'm thinking I could set this up to be two different materials as well. So some roads would have a sidewalk built into the image color. I don't have to do any like texturing. That can be done automatically. You can see how the default material is interacting with this background image. There's the background here. Background is, I think, called whiteboard or something, map BG. I can select it here, move it down in the Z plane, and everything will pop back up out of it. So I can now see where the footprints and stuff are in 3D space. If I hit A, I select everything that's selectable. I can pan around and have a look. So this other road needs to be done. I'm also thinking maybe the way that I made this road work with the little small curve was a bit cheap. I mean to say it was a bit of a dirty trick for me to show how to do that, when the issue really is I want this to be visible and editable. Right now we can see what the scaling factors are. I had those to 0.5, 0.05, 0.5. The road gets huge as a result again. But this is on a curve. I'll get rid of the T panel for a minute. Not my cup of tea. Cup of tea's right there. And yeah, if anyone has mumble, if you didn't catch my earlier message there and you haven't seen the chat yet, we could easily set up for a group chat and or if I kick road bevel off first, I'm going to apply the scale and rotation, or the scaling, to this thing. Now I'm going to try to put the bevel on. Same thing. Okay. If I turn on this, is this anything to do with these scales? Doesn't seem to be. If I scale this one up now, it gets bigger anyway. Okay. Well, I would much rather that was easier editable than that. I happen to remember, though, hey, what the beveling was second time around, and since this is all easy numbers at this moment in time, if I increase this by 0.10, like if I go in that direction, against the, if I don't multiply it by 10, but divide by 10, this will be 0.5, this one 0.05, right? 0.005. And 0.05, and I can copy this one if I really need to and just paste it. That gets me in the right area again. And any scaling, if I zoom good and close to this in orthographic, any scaling which I do with precision now will still maintain all the proper perspective or Hey John, welcome back. I'm settling in for the long run now, starting to get some of the roads laid in. What we got going on here? (9/11) jokes in chat. If anyone has mumble, by the way, let me know. Look for a common mumble server. I'm not running a mumble server, but we can easily find a common chat room somewhere and meet up like. And I've been eagerly thinking about stuff that I could throw out. So John, hey, I actually went looking for something for you specifically. Just because. I'm going to take a quick relocate.
Give me a strange one today because
Did you hear that?
I'm going to...
Here, listen again.
Alrighty then, welcome along to the Cult of Nick.
Hey, Nick.
Give
Hey,
me a strange
Dr.
one
Nick.
today because I'm going to wedge the interview into the podcast and do this bit now that I'm doing for you now, totally unaware of the interview that I'm introducing. So that's what's happening there. Generally speaking, the logic for the interviews that I include is that I try and make them tie in with what it is that I'm saying. I know, imagine that. I try and make the entire podcast make some sort of total sense. So I imagine it'll be vaguely appropriate to the kind of stuff I'm about to tell you about here.
I can easily
We've had
pause
a great
this
response
as needed.
to
So
the podcast in recent times. We've started having a lot of people commenting on the blog associated with it. thecultofnick.com, I think, or thecultofnick.co.uk will send you through to my blog where I write about stuff related to the podcast and sometimes not at all, sometimes just political rants. You know, as I practice to become some sort of mad right-wing talk show host in the future. But listen, here's the interesting thing. First of all, I have a response from Automatic Bob, who has told us what he thinks the oversoul is. Now, this is something I'm going to be talking to you about in this little first piece before we get into the interview, which is on the way next. And it's an idea which has started to grab hold of my mind, largely because I was listening to a self-help guru called Brian Tracy, who is a perfectly logical, perfectly reasonable person who believes all sorts of very far out occult ideas but applies them in a practical way, which is how I think occultism is best used. But the point is, he starts advocating this thing called the oversoul. So, the oversoul is an idea that I'm familiar with. David Icke advocates it as well. I think he calls it the God mind. Terence McKenna used to believe in it, I think, or certainly spoke about it.
reason I picked this one is this is in the comes from the month of October 2013, and he releases once per week, and the first episode of October was all about the oversoul, which is why he's dealing with this again now.
Quite a lot of people who I've mentioned on this podcast hinted at this idea of an oversoul, a god mind, a kind of a biological internet that envelops the earth that you can tap into for inspiration and so on, and intellectual sustenance whenever you want. And it's a nice idea, but I don't believe in it at all. I'm not understanding why I don't believe in it either. So Automatic Bot has written this excellent blog entry, which I'm going to read to you, and then I'm going to get into my thoughts on this idea, and then we'll go into the interview. Like I say, weird one this time round.
Okay.
It's largely because I've had loads of things I've got to sort out this week, including possibly this podcast. I think I may have fallen behind with payments for the podcast. I can't remember exactly how much it is. I've put 100 quid in a bank account about a year ago, and I think it's run out. I've put a little bit more in because do you remember when we were selling the album and I said, which we still are actually, and I said, oh, money from that will go into the podcast. Yeah, well, I think we got about 5 quid from that, 10 quid, something like that, sent across to my account. So we've run out anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a PayPal thingy. And this PayPal thingy, you'll be able to click on that and donate directly to the podcast.
He started taking Bitcoin after this too.
If people can
yes, he is a northerner.
In the tin there. But anyway,
yes, he is.
Automatic Bot has written this thing about the oversoul. So let me read you this, then give you my thoughts on this idea, then dive into the interview.
Here's the shit he's got going in the background
Automatic
too.
Bot. In response to the Cult of Nick podcast, the God Mind, what is it? Simply put, it is, or relates to, the theory of the higher self. Robert Bruce's Astral Dynamics gives a good, solid description. For those unaware of the term higher self, I shall elaborate. The higher self is a phrase used to describe you behind you. A guardian angel, the place where thoughts come from, the part of you that is separate from your ego/current consciousness, a higher form of consciousness. It is believed that meditating and affirmations to your higher self can actually affect your current consciousness world. Your current conscious world, and is used to navigate.
This is Masonic. I don't
the
know about that.
God mind or the oversoul.
You don't have to necessarily. Why is it Masonic?
Both tying into the law of attraction.
How do you figure that? I'll pause it right here to ask you that. Why? Because he's reading someone else's letter or point of view? or is it specific content? And because he doesn't necessarily agree with it. He's going to get into his own thoughts afterwards, what he said he was going to do, right? I find Nick interesting merely because he wants to engage with people no matter what. You'll listen to things which he doesn't agree with. He'll say why he doesn't agree with them, and he'll still let them say their piece no matter what. Seems like a rarity in Britain because talk radio doesn't like the pattern of the United States style of talk radio is what he's going after, right? He's trying to replicate the freedom of speech model so that people just say whatever. Sometimes he's got echoes going, like sometimes he's got stuff from call-ins ages ago he tried, you know.
Law of attraction is a belief that you can gain or cause something to happen based on believing and visualizing in it as...
Personally, I do not believe in the law of attraction. For example, the only law of attraction I recognize is gravity.
An already solid fact. An example would be the get rich quick self-help phrase, in order to become a rich man, you must think like a rich man. A rich man knows he is rich, knows he deserves money, whereas a poor man is stuck being poor. Hopefully this has shed some light on the topic of the God's mind. Thank you for reading so far. If anyone would like to rewrite this blog post to a finer point, I implore you to do so. That's a great little blog entry. Listen, I've linked to that from my blog, and it's pretty much sums up the idea, this idea of the God mind, which I'm going to have a look at now with you. Firstly, I don't listen. To say I don't believe in it sends people misinterpret that generally. What I'm saying to you is I don't believe or disbelieve in it. It just doesn't seem to have any evidence.
No, I'm not into it either. What I'm saying is the law. Well, the law of attraction, you'll find it all over the place. It's also the law of positivity. Anytime you talk to a positive thinkers group, yes, you're talking to law of attraction. Yes, you're talking to something which is probably got something else behind it, right? Law of attraction. It's the secret. It's the exact stuff that was pushed in the book, The Secret. It's also in What the Bleep Do We Know. It's also all over the place. But to say that it's a monolithic thing which links them all together is also kind of, it's the same as saying, well, all 2012 stuff was controlled by the Masons or whoever else. That the two don't compute to me. Doesn't follow. You can find law of attraction in all kinds of bunko shows. You can find it in any midway. Any carnival barker knows about the law of attraction. I'm not saying it's true. I'm only saying that the way the advertising works is by a law of attraction in an essence. There's no law to it. It's a description of human gullibility or ease of attraction. Ever seen pictures of Japanese advertising from the 16th, 17th century? It is new age. It is new age mysticism. Nick isn't. Nick's somewhere in between.
Attached to it, this notion of an oversoul or a God mind. And so I'm unsure about it, and I'm unsure what to make of it. However, it does seem to tie into another idea, which, how would you describe it? Well, let me try and describe this other idea. I'm going to get into this. Well, it is off the top of my head, so it might not make sense. But it'll be interesting to compare and contrast these two ideas. So remember, you've got these occult groups, and this God mind oversoul, it's called the Secret Doctrine by, I think it's Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky.
There you go.
Bloody name now.
Madame Blavatsky.
Call it the Secret Doctrine. It's very popular.
I am no fan of Madame Blavatsky.
It was sometimes felt that the oversoul would exist in something called the ether, which again, very popular amongst occult groups, but not something that is taken seriously by mainstream science, the ether. In fact, it's been disproved, the ether, they say, by something called the Michelson-Morley experiment, which basically says that if we had something like that, we wouldn't have an atmosphere. So these ideas have been taken seriously in the past by the scientific world, in a sense, but they've been largely neglected. And that doesn't mean to say that I disbelieve in them, but like I say, I find it very hard to believe these things are true, simply because of the lack of evidence, as far as I can see it, for a biological internet, a place where telepathic thoughts can be sent from one human mind to another. But that these ideas have been...
But the actual internet allows us to send not telepathic thoughts, but teletyped thoughts to one another at almost light speed with a lag.
believed in. As Automatic Bop points out, you have a system that happens in human consciousness whereby if people believe something to be the case, we have the kind of mind that tries to make what we believe is the case true. It's very strange, but the more someone thinks something is the case, the more they act as if it is the case. And we get what's known as the self-fulfilling
I think he's being suggestive here.
prophecy.
Yes.
Now,
I don't agree with
these
him.
occult groups, many of whom operate at the top end of society. I mean, Freemasonry would be a good example.
Oh,
Society with
Masons?
secrets, and in that sense, they're an occult group. And I'm being very careful here because the Freemasons get testy sometimes with.
Aha! Good catch, John.
But I'm just saying, listen, I don't hate or like Freemasons particularly. I don't have any opinion either way, again, on their stuff. But I think some of their ideas are quite interesting. And one of their ideas, you know, the Grand Architect, I think they call it, this oversoul, this God mind that we're discussing.
There you go. That is
And
a
I think
direct
it's becoming a
Masonic
self-fulfilling
connection.
prophecy. Meaning that although these things have been spoken of as if they're true, only now does it appear to be the case that these things are becoming true. What do I mean by that? Well, the internet appears to be the Gaian mind. It appears to be the oversoul, the God mind, the secret doctrine, the great project, the grand architect. All of those things match perfectly the description of the internet as it is now. In other words, people have been enchanting this over and over again, saying this thing is true, and now we appear to be constructing it. Whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know. But
I typed that
it does
one.
seem to be the case that if you were to be describing to people in the past what the internet was, you'd probably end up describing the oversoul, the God mind, and all these other things. The root, the source of all knowledge, past and present. And now, human beings seem to be involved in a wider ongoing process. You are part of a chain of events which has seen the transformation of matter from intangible kind of food, substances and so on, a collection of ingredients, into sperm and egg, and then into fetus, and then into the human form you describe yourself as now. You're part of a larger chain of events that you don't remember and don't understand, right? Well, I assume you don't understand them. Maybe you do. You might have a belief system that explains it all. Perhaps you were made in 7 days by a magic man who lives in the sky. But my point of view is that we don't know what's going on. Something weird's happening, we're not sure what. And in the past, we know we're a lot smaller, right? I don't know whether I was a sperm or an egg in the past. Some people identify themselves as being a sperm, others an egg. Most people appreciate we're a combination of the two. But in the past, what would that have been like when I was a sperm? I don't know. You know, it would have been a very strange experience, I'm sure. But one of the things that we know is that when I transformed from being a sperm and egg into a fetus and then on into a fully grown born human, then I was growing and expanding in size. And that also will have been true when I shifted from a collection of molecules and atoms and shifted into a sperm and an egg. Again, we're talking about massive increases in scale as you go through each stage of this wider ongoing process that nobody seems to understand. What's interesting, and this is not necessarily my idea, it's quite an old idea, what's interesting is that we now appear to be on the verge of another transformation. The human race, spread out as it is across the earth, appears to be doing something that is bigger than itself. And that appears to be the construction of a brain, effectively, that neural networks that spread out across the planet and create a giant surface structure brain that coats the planet Earth. And if we look at the kind of pattern that's developed, each time we've jumped up by a level of consciousness, we've jumped up massively in terms of physical size, and the distinction in size between a sperm and a human being, well, it's comparable to the distinction in size between a human being and the planet Earth. What's to think that we're not now on the verge of what would be described as planetary consciousness, where we start to understand that you and I are not necessarily separate and distinct people, but we're part of planet Earth. We're part of a bigger system, and we're floating through space.
That is what we meant when we said the word world.
Brain, effectively,
part of this world, right?
and we don't know why.
I mean people, but it's world that we say.
This is what I'm saying to you, is that these ideas, when you knit them together, hint towards what has been referred to in the past as planetary consciousness. Now, the last time that something weird like this happened to you or or any other human being, it was something like this. You'll have been inside the womb.
I don't know about that.
You could apparently hear echoes. Once you're in the later stages of development, you can hear the echoes of noises and so on, voices, and the change of fluctuation of vents.
That's kind of what he's saying about the Masons, right? The
completely
Masons aren't getting rid of God by
you're
doing
a
their
god.
thing.
So, you imagine it. You're in the womb. You're completely enclosed in that reality. Your only understanding of the world, if indeed you have an understanding at that point, is that you're it and there's nothing else. I think it's Freud that describes the process of being born quite well, actually. Look up his descriptions and try and imagine it, even though you can't remember it. When you popped out, so to speak, there will have been things that looked like you, right? You're a person and you resemble other people. And those things were your parents or guardians or whoever it was. And the thing that you noticed, I'm assuming, is that if they started to talk to you and you made noises back, you started a line of communication with them, etc., etc. Now, if it's the case that we're about to witness what's known as planetary consciousness, and we're going to start to really understand that we, although we're separate, are in fact part of a larger organism called the Earth, the next logical step is for us to look at other planets, things that look like ourselves, and see if they're making any noises, see if they're doing any of the things that you recognised as a baby in your parents. And some people, of course, claim that is the case. Some people, of course, claim religions and so forth, claim that for many years extraterrestrial visitors from other planets, from other star systems, have landed upon this planet and given us information, talked to us and said stuff. That seems to be the next stage
3 world wars
of human
or 3
evolution to me. It seems so
world
obvious
wars prediction. Well,
think about it, that's kind of where we're.
If we take that Korea started in 1950 and there hasn't been an end of the Korean conflict, we're still fighting World War II or World War III.
Carl Sagan used to say, "The sky calls to us." You know, it issues forth a challenge. And I think that's what's happening at the moment. I think we're starting to feel that sense of challenge. So, the Oversoul, the giant biological internet, often enchanted for many, many years, appears to be being built in the form of the internet. And if that's the case, it makes me enormously optimistic, because it makes me think that the whole drive of the internet towards weird esoteric thought, conspiracy theory, UFOs, all that kind of business, that surely is the dawning of planetary consciousness.
Suppose you were to make an announcement by 2 highly trusted individuals around the world.
Here's the interview.
Hard to find anybody, but let's say the Queen and the Pope. That's an odd couple, but why not?
Why not?
About the same age, as a matter of fact, I guess. Saying that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft. What would happen?
Here we go.
Admissions to mental hospitals would go up. The stock market would go down. Church attendance would go up. But I think one of the biggest things that would happen is that there would be a push by the younger generation. This is after 600 college lectures, I'm saying this. For a new view of ourselves, instead of as English, American, Canadian, Brazilian, whatever, as Earthling. Obviously, from an alien viewpoint, we are all Earthlings. We don't like that very much. You might have noticed that nationalism seems to be the curse of mankind. That's a horrible thing to say, I suppose, but it's true. Yeah. There's no government that I'm aware of, yours or mine, and I'm a dual citizen of Canada and the United States, neither one of those, wants people to owe their allegiance to the planet instead of that individual country. Nationalism's the only game in town.
In other words, the fact that you and I are dead into UFOs and extraterrestrials doesn't necessarily mark us out as boring geeks. It marks us out as people who may actually be moving in the correct... Well, correct's the wrong word. Moving in the inevitable direction of consciousness that our state suggests. What I'm saying is that it feels like we're going in the right direction. Look at how successful
that our state suggests.
Of, the galaxies, the stars,
He's an interesting listen.
Online. Look at how successful.
He plays nice with everybody, even when he says later he doesn't
bigger
agree.
And bigger all the time. fingers crossed. I'm enormously optimistic about the world nowadays. And like I say to you, it does seem that we're part of a bigger process that is as mad as the process, behind being born was. That's as mad as the process behind even getting conceived within your mother's womb was. As mad as the very process of life itself, because that's what I'm talking about here. You and I are alive.
Talked about how
it's
when he
weird.
first started
It
doing
doesn't
this
make any
podcast,
sense. And in the
he was
long
getting
term,
around
maybe our
broadcast
eyes
rules
just turn
because
into
it could be
giant brains
construed as
floating
cult-like
through the
or
sky.
blasphemous.
Realising your planet Earth, looking outwards and thinking, oh, it still doesn't make any sense. In other words, if we are on the verge of a quote-unquote global awakening, which may not happen in our lifetimes, but something weird's going on with the internet, then it does suggest to me that it's not a process that we should be terrified of. In fact, we should remember that it's probably part of a larger process that no single human being understands. It's probably part of a larger process that could bring about some sort of terrifying, cataclysmic event, but ultimately might not be for the bad. I mean, imagine that. If you were with your mates swimming along towards the egg, and then one of them gets through, fertilises the egg, what happens to the remaining sperm? They all die. Or was that a waste of time? Did they die? What happened? We don't know. But that would have been quite a distressing experience, I suspect. Being a member of one of the... I mean, ye gods, most of them don't even get to the egg. A lot of sperm splattered over a sock somewhere. What's that? Is that just waste? Do those sperm die? What I'm saying to you is that if you think of yourself in that context, involved in a larger process that you don't understand, and remember that there's no reason to think that that's stopped, that kind of giant, larger process, we perhaps are now sat upon another egg, right at this very moment, waiting to fertilise the earth upon which we stand. And the internet itself appears to be part of that process. And I think that's a good thing, personally. I hope you're following this theory. I intend to write it up properly soon. Usually, the podcast gets pieces after I've written them. However, that's done from my notes. That's done from a collection of about 4 sentences. Ideas in my head that I'm trying to work out. I think they'll fit nicely in the book. But there we go.
He's got a book he hasn't finished writing
yet.
yet.
PayPal account, if I manage to get one up and running by next week. I'd love it if you could chuck a quid in there. That'd be wonderful. And that would be great stuff. So that's what's going to happen there. And now we're going to cut across to the incredible interview that I've done and specially selected for this podcast. It's an interview with, I don't know who, but it's brilliant. Have a listen.
This is the Cult of Nick.
It's Kerrang! It's the night before. My name's Nick Majerison. Man, this guy's going to be interesting. We got a guy from the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom. He's going to talk to us about whether or not there's life after death and the awesome struggle that these guys have had, which goes back many, many, many years with the censors. And this is something I remember personally. Let's get him on the show. His name's Michael Roll. He is a philosopher, free thinker, researcher. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me, Nick. I'm delighted to speak to your listeners.
Now, Campaign for Philosophical Freedom. Let me tell you how I first
Sounds
came
like
into
Marty
touch with
Feldman.
you guys. It was a while ago. When you get a job
Thanks
doing
for
a
having me,
speech show,
Joe.
on the radio, they go through certain things with you. And one of the things that they went through with me a long, long time ago was that you couldn't talk in a serious
say there,
manner
John? I didn't
about
catch it.
life after
Rome
death
is a spiritual
because
home.
That was the inalienable prerogative of our Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ. And I'm talking
I'm not too
maybe
worried about
this
symbolic
can't have
stuff
been,
like that.
Any earlier than 1990.
Georgia
4,
Guidestones,
5,
they're
6.
kind of crazy.
It wasn't an enormously long time
That's
ago.
a little bit
I had these
off
kind
the
of
bat, the
briefings about what you can and
deep
can't
end,
say,
that one.
and what is and is not the territory of Jesus Christ. And you guys were involved in changing that law, right?
Yeah, so we can now talk about survival after death in a serious scientific manner, which you certainly couldn't do before we got the law changed. We can now talk in a serious scientific manner about life after death on the radio. The radio authority changed the rules because we proved to them that they were wrong on this. Thanks to people like Richard Dawkins, who are tearing into these crazy religions now, at last people are thinking for themselves. And it's all taken off in a big way.
Thanks to Richard
But let me
Dawkins.
quote what Adrian Berry, the science correspondent of the Daily Telegraph, says a few years ago. Few subjects infuriate scientists more than talk of paranormal phenomena, because if confirmed, the whole fabric of science would be threatened. So, Nick, it's not just the religionists, the priests, the mullahs and the rabbis we're up against. It's the whole of orthodox science as well. They must stop the secular scientific case of survival from reaching the masses. But they're going to fail because of the internet and people like yourself.
All buildings with roofs.
I've eliminated this dreadful priestly word belief from my vocabulary. I accept things, reject things, and anything I'm not too sure about I put in my pending tray. But I accept survival after death because I've made a very careful study of it. I've witnessed full materialization phenomena myself, and
Isn't
I
interesting?
accept it as I do night following day.
Prove it to me. I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
Yeah, he has witnessed full materialization.
He
has witnessed full materialization phenomena. That's why he knows life after death for sure. That's what he's going to swear. He has witnessed full materialization. This is the Ghostbusters movie that should have been made. This
after death is possible in the real scientific world without using any magic.
Well, you've got to work with the experiment first. The experiment it started in 1874, one of the greatest scientists this country's ever produced, a fellow called Sir William Crookes. He came across the only type of medium that can prove survival, a materialization medium. At one of these experiments, all 5 of our senses are working, and people from the invisible part of the universe can fully materialize, and for the short time they're on Earth, they're as solid and as natural as we are. And thankfully, Sir William Crookes and his scientific team came across one of these mediums, and they carried out repeatable experiments under laboratory conditions
by the bevel
over and over again, and in the end, he felt he could actually report what he had found. And
Bevel resolution doesn't have to be great
in the
because it's a
Quarterly Journal
square.
of Science in 1874. It's there for everybody to check on. He actually was the first one to prove survival after death by experimentation. And then teams of scientists after that carried out experiments. That's the classic way of doing it. You can't have one person doing it and not others. Then Professor Charles Richet, a Nobel laureate in science, carried out the same experiments with a different materialization medium, with a French team. Then a German team of scientists did the same thing. Then a Canadian team. Then an Irish team. And it's all there on the internet, but you won't hear this on mainstream media outlets or educational outlets. They don't want you to find this out, that it's been proved by experimentation. And that's what I've been trying to do for the last 20-odd years, is to get all this on film so people can see it themselves. But I ran into a brick wall because there's so many people trying to stop us doing this.
So why is it the case that people are trying to stop you from providing this evidence to people?
Because of that quote I said from Adrian Berry. Few subjects infuriate scientists more than talk of paranormal phenomena. Because if confirmed, the whole fabric of science would be threatened. They've gone down the wrong route since Einstein's theory of relativity came on the scene in 1905. They threw out the ether. Now, if you throw out the ether, you're throwing out what the religionists call the spiritual part of the universe.
Hang on a minute, let me just make this clear. The ether, as I understand it, is something that you can't see, but which connects us all, right?
That's right. But now, at last, they're starting to bring it back under a new name. They're so embarrassed that they threw it out. It's coming back, as you know, Nick, under the name of dark energy.
Dark energy?
It's only a fancy name for the ether. The spiritual part of the universe. It's the force of the universe that's causing everything. It's the force that produces everything. Produces suns and moons and planets and us. It's the force of the etheric world. These are where the people are coming from at our experiments. That's the real
a leap of logic.
We just come onto Earth for a very short time, locked into a physical body, and when the physical body conks out, we go back to where we came from.
So let me get on to these extraordinary claims that you're making. You're saying that you can make people materialize, and that people who work under your banner, you've actually made people materialize and you've chatted to them even though they're dead.
Absolutely. It's not me. It's the first scientist who did this was Sir William Crookes, and then there's the other scientists that I mentioned. Don't forget, Nick, we're dealing with forces that are beyond our 5 physical senses. They're in the invisible part of the universe. And as you know, if you're going to contact anything that's in the invisible part of the universe, you've got to work with a machine that will do the job. You're no good climbing on your roofs of your house to try and see the television signals hitting your area, because you won't see it. But you can if you switch on the medium in your front room, the television set. You see, that proves that there is something invisible hitting your aerials. There's nothing supernatural about this. It's all natural and normal forces.
So how are you contacting people who live inside the spirit world then?
The only way to contact them is through a medium, like a television set or a microscope. And the machine that can do the job in this case is a human mind and brain. The human mind and brain is a far more sophisticated instrument than anything invented by human beings. I'm sure you'll agree. But you've got to get hold of
It's not like Ghostbusters here. This guy is
and Hamilton did.
Flatliners.
Actually prove it, get it all on film. Recently deceased, internationally famous people can fully materialize, and we can film them fully materializing, proving they've survived death. But you cannot do that until you get hold of a materialization medium.
Currently, at the moment, you're searching for a medium.
So we're searching the world, yeah.
We're searching the world for a person who is up to the job of doing materialization mediumship, which is where basically they change into that person 100%.
No, it's not.
How does it work?
It's not like the film Ghost. It's much better than that.
Okay, talk us through how it works.
The medium goes into a trance in the corner of the room, and well away from the medium, the people are able to physically materialize, walk around the room. We can touch them, feel them, film them, and they're exactly the same as we are for the time they're on Earth, for a few hours or so.
What age are they?
Well, now, there's a certain amount of hearsay comes into this. I'm not interested in hearsay, but the fact that they can fully materialize and prove to their loved ones they're still alive is what counts.
Certain amount of hearsay.
Then you ask the questions about, well, are you still the same age
right
when
back.
you passed over? And they said, well, they can change their etheric bodies to be old or young. And when people have lost loved ones, they materialize very similar to how they remember them on Earth.
Right, I see, because you said, right. So
different laws of physics come into play. We're talking to totally different area of physics here.
do you worry that maybe you just want to believe this stuff and that affects your judgment?
No question of having to believe it. I've totally eliminated that dreadful word from my vocabulary. If we do repeatable experiments and recently deceased people, fully materialize, and we can film them being physically reunited with their loved ones on Earth, the word belief doesn't come into it at all. We've had this proof for some time. It hasn't been reaching the people en masse. And as soon as we get one of these mediums, we've now got the scientific team. These are top scientists. One Nobel laureate for physics, Professor Josephson from Cambridge University. He'll go in with his scientific team and get all this on film. He follows Sir William Crookes like I do and Sir Oliver Lodge. So
if people are listening to the show at the moment and they think to themselves, oh, I know a medium is pretty good, what would they get in touch with you through the website?
Oh, yes, please get in touch with me through the website. And we're only interested in materialization mediums, where people can fully materialize and walk around the room, separate from the medium. We're not interested in anything else. We don't want to go through any developing stages or anything.
Okay, so it's cfpf.org.uk. That's your website, cfpf.org.uk. Campaign for Philosophical Freedom.org.uk. So you're literally in the process of a worldwide search at the moment for...
Yes, and there must be a whole stack of materialization mediums out there. Now this publicity through the internet, it can't be long before we get one. And then the number one priority will always be the safety of the medium at all times, because they can be so easily killed if you interfere with this. It's very dangerous work. I made a terrible mistake in 1983 of giving this medium publicity. I started telling everybody on radio broadcasts and things like that. And of course that alerted the opposition, the materialists and the religionists. And they put the fear of Christ up this poor medium. They threatened her anonymously that if she goes ahead with her experiments, they won't only kill her, they'll kill her family. So understandably, she backed down. So this time, we're going to keep it very quiet. Once we get one of these mediums, we're going to clam up until they're ready to publish, like Sir William Crookes did.
I don't know what to make of this at all, but do you know what? I wish you luck in trying to get hold of a medium who can prove this, and then when you unveil it to the world's media, which will come at some point, do you know what? As soon as you have that extraordinary proof, make sure you come to us with it. I mean, we are the station that broadcast Edgar Mitchell's extraordinary claims to the world about aliens.
That's right, yeah.
So as soon as you have that, make sure you contact us, and I'm glad to help you in searching for a medium who can go under the microscope, so to speak. Thanks for being with us, man.
Oh, thanks, Nick.
What do you make of that, then? 0845 688 1052. Taking your calls in a second. 0845 688 1052. It's Kerrang Radio. It's the night before. Right, okay, listen, we're going to get a guy on the airwaves now. His name's Michael Roll. He's from the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom. And he believes in the idea of life after death. And he's looking to repeat an experiment which he believes proves life after death. And he thinks that once he's done this experiment, he'll be able to prove it to the nation, not just the nation, the world, for the rest of time, that there is such a thing as life after death. Let's get him on the airwaves. His name's Michael Roll from the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom. Michael, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for inviting me again for the second time.
Well, I was going to say, this is the second time you've been on, but tonight, here's what we want to do, right? I'm going to talk to you about your current quest to find a materialisation medium. So do you want to explain to the nation what a materialisation medium is?
Yes, most people know about ordinary mental mediums like Doris Collins and Doris Stokes. They sort of put loved ones in touch. But with a materialization medium, all 5 senses are working at one of these experiments. So it's crushing proof of survival. It's nothing to do with...
What would a materialize... I've seen a medium before. You know, they'll perform in the top of a pub and they'll go, is there anyone here,
That's
called
right.
Dave?
It's nothing like that. If it was like that, I wouldn't be in the slightest bit interested.
Not that kind of... The sort of medium most people have seen where they go, is there anyone who knows a John? Are you called John?
That drives me bonkers, that sort of thing.
So you're not after that. So what you're after is a medium that does what?
Well, it could actually prove survival. Somebody who once lived on Earth can come fully materialised, walk around the room and speak to us in exactly the same voices they had on Earth. And this has already been done. We're going to repeat the experiments. I mean, top international teams of scientists have done these experiments over many years. It's just been kept from the people, that's all.
So
that's why I call my movement the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom, because hardly anybody in the world knows about this, including your producer, Alex.
Yeah. Well, hang on a minute. So what you're saying is, at the moment, people who... Because, you're on the air, literally, in order to appeal to the nation for a materialisation medium. Now, I've seen a woman once who did something similar to, I think, what you're describing. And she sat at the front of the room, and then she started pulling faces and pretending to be people. Is that the sort of thing?
No, nothing at all. The mediums that these scientists have worked with, and I've witnessed myself, goes into a trance in the corner of the room, and at about 5 paces away from the medium in trance, people who once lived on Earth fully materialise, and they're reunited with their loved ones on Earth. And for that period, they're as solid and as natural as we are.
So you've witnessed that happening?
Yes, I have indeed. It's all on my website, of course. People can read all my reports. But I'd rather start off by reading the reports that have already been done by one of the greatest scientists we've ever produced, Sir William Crookes, a president of the Royal Society, for goodness sake. You don't get any higher than that. And he carried out repeatable experiments under laboratory conditions, and he published in the Quarterly Journal of Science in 1874.
That's quite a while ago, though.
Yeah, but then after that, he was the first to do it. Then after that, other teams of international scientists did their own reports. They had the same results. Professor Charles Richet, he's a French Nobel laureate for medical science. He says this: there is ample proof that experimental materializations should take definite rank as a scientific fact. Now, everybody can check it out now, thank goodness, because of the internet.
So you're the one, what you're saying is your Campaign for Philosophical Freedom, you're the ones who are going to prove this scientific fact.
Well, we're going to repeat the experiments. It's already been proved, Nick. Honestly, if it hadn't been proved, I wouldn't be interested, because I'm a raging skeptic and I'm an atheist.
Okay.
But I'm putting forward the atheist case for survival after death.
Well, listen, Michael, here's what I want to ask you. Right? First of all, I want to ask you, how many
Sounds
materialisation
like it's going badly all of a
do you
sudden.
think there are alive today in the United Kingdom?
Well, I think there's about 3 or 4 that are around, but they're attached to the religion of spiritualism, and they're not at all keen to work with our scientists, unfortunately. We have tried it, Nick, I promise you we've tried it, but they're frightened to death of bringing in scientists because they think all scientists are raging skeptics, but they're not. The scientists on my team will have already committed themselves
we already have
to
here.
survival
There's one for
after death.
whiteboard and one for not.
So is it possible that there'll be someone listening to the show who knows of a
Press like this.
materialisation medium?
It's the one that's on
who
it.
will
Or
be able
set
to
that
go,
to
hang on a
be.
minute, and what about Doris down the road? She does that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I can assure that if a medium does come onto us, then the safety of the medium will be number one priority at all times. Nothing will be done to harm them. And the scientists who will be coming in are 100% on their side. They're all scientists I'm in touch with who have committed themselves to survival, so they've got nothing to lose from it. But the safety of the medium will be number one priority, because it is very dangerous, this. You can easily get killed. The great Helen Duncan was killed by a police raid.
You can get killed.
Oh, God, yeah. The people. This is what happened to Helen Duncan in 1956.
Hang on, who's Helen Duncan?
Helen Duncan was the last great
Hey, Hannes.
materialisation we had in England, and she was killed by a police
No
raid.
worries.
Now, if she was a fraud, she wouldn't have been injured, let alone killed.
She was killed by a police raid.
Yeah, because you see, when
No worries
the
there,
medium
Yanis.
goes into trance, the scientists from the etheric
Listen to the
world
cult
who
of
set
Nick
up
here in the background tonight.
take stuff from her
It's from
body
like 4 years ago.
a sort of temporary sort of spacesuit for people to materialize in, and that's what killed her. When the police broke the doors down, the ectoplasm that was taken from her body rushed back into her body, and she died about three weeks later of internal hemorrhage.
Why did police break the doors down?
Well,
in the
because
middle
of this, they're all terrified of this.
We got the
You know
proper
who the hell's gonna
Ghostbusters
pay
talk
the
tonight.
salaries of the priests, the mullahs, the rabbis. They've got a monopoly on the life after death industry. They've got to fight like tigers to stop this getting out, because they'd be totally redundant. And then there's orthodox science that starts from the base of when you're dead, you're dead. So we've got a double whammy against us. We've got the whole of the scientific establishment fighting us, and the religious establishment. So don't be surprised why this isn't getting out, and why you never see our qualified scientists on television, because the television codes forbid them from coming on.
So, hang on a minute. So this is quite intense, Michael. What you're saying is that any materialisation medium who is listening to the show, the first thing they need to do is keep quiet about their ability to conjure up dead people.
Well, they don't conjure up. They just go into a trance in the corner of the room, and the etheric people. It's all the experiments are done from the etheric world, what the religionists call the spiritual part of the universe. They don't do anything. They don't even know what's going on at the medium. It's only us who are in the room witnessing it.
They're talking about ghosts.
So let me home in on the incident.
To be perfectly frank and simple, I'll pause for a second. The guy who's interviewing, his name is Nick. He's interviewing this other guy, and he interviewed him a long number of times. This wasn't new in 2013 when this was aired last, and it went out on a podcast. This happened on the radio in like the early 2000s, where he was talking to this scientist guy who says that he will confirm that there is life after death, because he's looking for mediums. He needs mediums to help prove it, but he believes that life after death is real. And he's questioning the guy the host is questioning the guy how he knows this. So they're talking about things which frankly are ideas discussed in movies like the original Ghostbusters back in the 1980s. Ectoplasm, the whole works.
You witnessed this for yourself. You witnessed a materialisation medium. What do you want to just start from the beginning and tell us the story, Michael?
Well, I've read the subject all my life, so what I was waiting for was for another materialisation medium to come on the scene. And this is in 1983 when I saw a report in the Psychic News that a materialisation medium had indeed come on the scene called Rita Gould. And I wrote to her and sent her my scientific backup for what she's doing, and she was thrilled to bits, and she invited me up to witness it. And she was far superior to all the other mediums that had gone before, because Sir William Crookes, for example, only had just one person materialising. But this medium eyewitness had as many as 6 people materializing, and they were all recently deceased people, so you could reunite
There
them
are,
with their
but
families.
I find that
And
the
was all done.
discussions
All
in
the
this
families
chat
of these
in this
people
chat
being
are going to
reunited.
inevitably go toward these directions
So,
anyway.
hang on a minute. So you saw
Hang on a second.
you hooked up with her.
When I first started playing this, there was another guy here. His name is John. John identified right away what some of the themes were going to be, including the spiritualism, which we've been hearing for the last 10 or 15 minutes. And I walked out for a cigarette there. I've heard these before, and I'm chuckling to myself because I've heard them before. But yeah, it's a weird discussion. It's a weird discussion. There were many ghosts. Clowns running from the scene like crazy people. Everything.
And I realised this is what we're looking for, and the first thing I said to her when she came round from trance, because she wasn't witnessing anything that I witnessed.
Thinking about something
Michael,
else
I
here.
want you to-
There were many ghosts, but you know another word for... I'll put it in here. I'll put it into the chat here. AKA a CIA spook. Got to put the word CIA in the front of spook, otherwise I'll be called a racist for saying spook. But I understand that another word for spy is ghost or spook, right? It's the only way we can actually discuss these things without being charged with some kind of crime.
Tell me, the first time you witnessed someone coming back from beyond the grave. That's what I'm interested in, because I can't get my head around this. It's too much for me.
Well, you've got to read the subject. It's all been suppressed from you, I'm afraid, Nick. People haven't had access to this information. That's why I call myself the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom.
Right, well, unsuppress it. Listen, let me tell you. I want you to tell me the story of the first time that you witnessed a materialization medium.
Yeah,
a materialization medium summoning someone up from beyond the grave.
Well, I mean, it's no good taking somebody's word for it when they materialise and say, I am so-and-so. You've got to check them out. And that had already been done before I got there.
Had a whole bunch of materials for the tops of buildings.
A medium that I was telling you about, Helen Duncan,
You
fully
want to change those
materialised
after, but
long after
I need
she
the
died
placeholders.
at this experiment. Now, a journalist had been there before me called Alan Cleaver, and you can read the Alan Cleaver report on my website. He gave crushing proof there that it really was Helen Duncan materializing, because he got her daughter there a few weeks later to be reunited with her mother. And that
The guy was talking
proof.
about...
And that had been done before I went there, so I
Listen.
knew we were dealing with something really genuine.
So listen to me, right? I want the story of the first time you saw it happen.
Well, I'd read these reports and I knew it was genuine because this experiment had been done. And when the medium goes into trance, as many as 6 people fully materialised.
Yeah, I get that. But when you
He
turned up...
he was claiming a minute ago that a cop interrupted a seance, a trance, and the medium who was conducting the trance died 3 weeks later because of the rush of ectoplasm. Sorry, it's not funny, but it's funny.
At her house, and you watched it happen for the first time.
Well, you go into a sealed room to make sure that nobody else can get in. There was only 4 of us in the room itself, including the medium. And the medium went into a trance, and within a very short time, people started materialising well away from the medium.
So slow down. So you're there, there's about 5 of you in the room. 4 of you and her, the medium.
Yep,
She goes into trance, right?
that's right.
And then... Now, this will have been the first time you'd ever seen someone come back from beyond the grave. Right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So-
I've read about it, but I'd never witnessed it
Yeah.
before.
So here's what I'm zooming in on, right? I want to understand what when we say they materialised. What are we talking about? Are we talking about you blink and suddenly they're there, or are we talking about the room goes cold? Ectoplasm forms and and a solid human stumbles from it. What are we talking about? Describe it.
No, well, in Helen Duncan's day, it was done in red light, and so you could actually see the forms. But but when I witnessed it, it hadn't been done in red light, because when Helen Duncan materialised in front of me, I said, "Look, Helen, I'm terrified. The same thing's going to happen to this medium here, Rita Gould."
Hang on, slow down. Remember, I'm zooming in on the first time
That's
this ever
right.
happened to you, right? So you're there, And is the room bathed in red light?
No, it was in her day, but in this time it was done in pitch black.
Gotcha.
But
So it's pitch black.
It's
and
pitch black, and for a reason, Nick. We must explain to the listeners why this is done, because it was the red light that killed Helen Duncan. She was materializing in red light. And she said, ever since I was killed in 1956, Mike, the scientists over here have been refining this ectoplasm. So
Slow down, Michael. You've jumped ahead. I'm trying to picture the moment. You're there. You've got 4 people and the medium, but it's pitch black.
I think Nick might be trolling him a bit.
You've got to go back to Helen Duncan's time. She was materializing in red light, so people could see the ectoplasm building.
Sure, I get that.
Could see it building.
I'm not really interested in that. What I'm interested in is your story and what happened to you. So you're there, and you're telling us as a witness that you're in that room. It's dark. And then what happens when someone materialises? How do you know they've materialised?
Well, they come up and talk to you. They can talk to you as easily as I'm talking to you, and you can touch them, they can touch you, and
but
they
you
can
can't
speak
see
to you.
them.
No,
Right.
but it doesn't matter because we've now got infrared cameras, and we've got laser cameras, and we've got night vision goggles.
Gotcha.
We've got all the equipment, you
Gotcha.
see. So there's no point in me doing all these experiments. I said the first thing we've got to do now is, when I finish, is get a top scientific team in here to cover it all on film,
Yeah.
so that everybody in the world can see it, Nick. This is
Okay.
what we've got to do.
I understand, but I'm interested in your story. So what you're saying is you're in a room. There's those people with you. There's a medium with you. It's pitch black, and someone has materialised, and that person is the woman you've been talking about, who was a previous materialisation medium, right?
Yes, Helen Duncan. Yeah.
Okay, so Helen Duncan is in the room, and this is someone you'd met when she was alive.
No, I hadn't met her, but she had been checked out previously by that
Gotcha.
journalist only a few months before,
Cool. So
and we
you've
know
never-
she's genuine because
I
she's been
understand,
reunited
yeah.
with her daughter.
You've never met her before, but nonetheless, she's in the room and she's talking to you. And what does she say to you? I mean, what's her first words? What were the first words you heard from beyond the grave?
Well, she just said, Michael, you're very welcome here. I know that you've got a plan to get a scientific team in here and do this. And she says, we will go along with you. You can bring in the scientists with their infrared cameras. They had been planning this as well. Of course, I was absolutely thrilled to bits.
But how did you respond? Because here's what I'm trying to picture. You know, even if I have researched this area. It's not something I believe in, but it is something that I've looked into. Even when I've researched things that are extraordinary, when they happen, they still shock me. So were you shocked when you were talking to, in your opinion, the materialised spirit of this medium?
Not in the slightest, because I've been reading the subject all my life. So I would have been shocked if it wasn't genuine.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. So it wasn't a shock to me, because
So you'd have been shocked had it not have happened?
Absolutely, I'd have been very disappointed, and I'd been
That's
very
right.
cross that I'd wasted my time
I was
going
playing,
all the way from Bristol to Leicester. But
what I was
didn't.
doing
I
was-
thrilled to bits because
Which implies you could...
I was showing, actually, I'll do it again, because it's worth showing twice. Music theory. Going by this is the ionic scale on this thing. I'm going to turn off just one filter on my camera, so it's easier to see it. The frets, right, is in the ionic scale, and it's open tuning to D. But if you play it here, you play from the tonic and the dominant part of the chord. You can play Greek music in G. Without really thinking about it, because of something like that. But it'd be simpler to do with the D one like this than it would be with a G. But then again, the name of the scale that this is in is ionic. The what would you call this? The intervals, right? 2 semitones, or a full tone, semitone, full tone, semitone, ionic scale. So it makes doing Greek music very simple. So it's easy. When it dawned on me how easy it would be, I was like, ah ha 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 ha. I laughed. I've been doing it years on a banjo, just doing it in G anyway. But to have an actual, like an instrument tune for it, was like, I have lots of fun. Next time someone breaks a plate around me and I got that in my hands, it's going to be a hopa! As soon as I hear it.
You've been deceived, isn't it?
Yes, and I would soon know, because I'm a raging skeptic. It's got to be bloody good to impress me.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the first. So then you're chatting to her. She's materialised, and she's saying, "Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing the experiments and so forth." What happens next? Does anyone else materialise?
Well, the next person that materialised was a little boy of 9 years old who was died previously, about 20 years previously, of cancer, and he fully materialised, and he had been reunited with his parents on something like 50 experiments before I even got there.
Now,
we know he was genuine as well.
Was he and the medium you were talking about before, were they both in the room at the same time?
Yeah, there were about 6 materialise on a regular basis.
Yeah, sure, but slow down. I'm trying to piece the story together. So you've got those 2 people, they're in the room with you at the same time. Now, whilst those 2 people are in the same room, was it ever the case that they were both talking at once?
Absolutely, yes. And and the little Russell, a 9-year-old boy, was rushing around the room as well.
And then what happened?
Well, then another boy materialised, a 16-year-old boy who got killed on his motorcycle, and he was the son of the people whose house we are in, Barry and Pat Jeffrey. And he materialises every time one of these experiments is done.
Of course.
Okay, so now you've got a total of 3 people in the room.
Of course.
Then Raymond Lodge materialised, the son of Sir Oliver Lodge, who was killed in the First World War. And he sat next to me for about an hour talking about science.
1, 2, 3, 4,
the
5,
experiments
6.
that we're going to do with the scientists.
So he's sat next to you, but you can't see him?
No, but I can touch him, and he touched me as well.
Okay, but none of these people obviously were connected to you. I mean, was there anyone connected to you?
No. Yeah, so the second time I went there, towards the end of the first time, they said, "Is anybody here you'd like me to get, Mike, next time? You're coming back with your mother next week." I said, "Oh, I'd love you to get my dad if you could." And they said, "If he's over here, we'll try and dig him out." And sure enough, next time I went back, my father fully materialised, giving me the crushing personal proof of survival.
But this time again, you couldn't see him because you're in a dark room.
No, but you know if you're talking to your father, don't you, Nick? Supposing the blind man would know if he's talking to somebody like as close to them as a father.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, you imagine you couldn't fool a blind man that he's not talking to his father if he fully materialised, could you?
I honestly don't know.
What?
I mean, the thing for me,
you couldn't fool a blind man? What?
Stuff, my take on it is always that I can be fooled.
Yeah. I'm the same. I mean, I wouldn't want anybody to believe this. I want everybody to check out what's
Yanis.
gone before.
Now, do you know what I find fascinating about you? And one of the reasons that I enjoy having you on the show is that you are trying to prove this to be the case. All right, well, let's put it this way. Listen, you're a friend of the show. I'm glad we had you on the second time round. I've enjoyed talking to you. Your website, www.cfpf.org.uk. That's cfpf.org.uk. Now, let me tell you, we have a big audience of people. This is one of the top 10 radio stations in the country now, and this is one of the biggest shows on it. So here's the deal. If you're listening to the show now and you know of a materialisation medium who's prepared to submit themselves to the test that this chap, Michael Roll, wants to arrange, either contact him directly through his website, or you can email us, nick@kerangradio.co.uk. Because what we want to do is we want to move this forward. We want to get you together with a materialisation medium. Now, you've made it clear, let's just lay down the terms and conditions here. You've made it clear you will keep them and their
He was
names
working for
secret.
Kerrang Radio when he did this.
You will not be, going to the media and saying, hey, we're going to do this big experiment, it's going to happen on this date. And the intent, basically, is to prove that it's true. So you're not out to disprove anybody particularly. What would happen, Michael, if we found you a materialisation medium who arrived on your doorstep and said, yeah, I'm Madam Doris whatever, and I can make, people appear, and it turned out that they were dicking you about? Would you expose them, or would you leave them to it?
No, in the case of a materialisation medium, I just say thanks very much. Don't call us, we'll call you. Right?
Don't call us.
They'd be crazy to come to us anyway if they're not genuine, wouldn't they? As you so rightly implied, you think they're not coming forward because they're not genuine, which is a fair enough point. And you're quite right. We can't progress in this proving survival until we get one of these. You're quite right.
But I think,
everything depends on this.
Let me tell you what I think, Michael. I think it would be good if all comers were considered, and if anyone who was ingenuine, if you gave them a guarantee, that you're not out to expose them, because there are people who are out to prove this stuff not to be true. They're very aggressively trying to prove this
Absolutely,
stuff.
that's we would, and if we found a genuine
John.
one, of course we'd only have scientists who are on their side coming in, and they'd publish the results of their findings. You see, and it would all be on film. Recently deceased, internationally famous people would be on film being physically reunited with their loved ones on Earth. Crushing proof of survival. And we now know where the next world is, thanks to subatomic physics.
Okay.
It's another wavelength.
Well, a lot of that stuff's quite esoteric, and it'll end up confusing me. But do you know what, Michael? What I want to do is the gauntlet has been laid, all right? It's been laid in front of an audience of thousands who know, obviously, and the deal is, as you know, here's how it works on radio. If someone's listening to this now and they're thinking to themselves, I know a materialisation medium, or I know someone who knows a materialisation medium, a good chunk of the United Kingdom is hearing your cry, and I hope someone answers it, because if they do, then we'll get you on the show and talk to you about it once the experiment's finished.
Yes, give them my phone number, Nick, and I'll
This
be
is going to be
I'll
over
go and see
in less
them.
than a minute.
They haven't got to come and see me. I'll go and see them.
Okay, Michael Roll from the Campaign for Philosophical Freedom. Thanks for coming on the air.
Thanks, you, Nick. Thanks very much.
That made sense, hopefully, Michael.
So there we are, and now I'm going to pretend that I've sat and listened to that interview, which I haven't. I've just recorded these bits in the studio. I'm a bit all over the place at the moment, but it was good, that, wasn't it? I've got a great interviewing technique, me, and what an interesting guest. Or guests, I might put in too, I don't know. Anyway, listen, make sure you download next week, and hopefully I'll be able to tell you about my little donate button.
Yeah. So that's Carlton Nick, just to give you a taste of what you might be listening to in the future on this channel. Not all the time. Where's the rain? I know the rain stopped 2 days ago. Thank goodness. It was a record rainfall for the period, because it was going 3 days without stopping. It was like we had a tropical storm without the wind. Lots and lots of rain. I'm soon going to have to take another break. I can get some supper. But what I'm doing here now is I'm trying to get the mesh objects here, which I've defined as planes. I want to make sure that I can select the ones that I want to select, and then assign them colors based on what, basically what the roof is. So there'll be different colored roofs for any block that has a bunch of different things in it. Like here, I think this one over here, for example, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Generally about 6 per block. This one up here less. 1, 2, 3. Where's the rain? Oh, I enjoy the rain too. I could probably go back over my old files and download, look through the soundtrack and just get a piece to loop, stick it in VLC. Then I need to pee every 20 minutes. Listening to the rain like that. There is a way of doing this for material index. Groups. Add to group. No. Display. Nope. Relations extra. Nope. None of that. Constraints. No, it's got to be here. Mesh data. Which one was I working on? It was this one, wasn't it? No. That one. So there's not shape but vertex groups have been defined here, and it's still not doing what I want it to do. It caught them right, but there should be a way for me to explicitly color these with material. So let me try this again. Control L to get the linked ones. Not vertex groups. Let's try color groups. Vertex colors. Can relate this. So I'll try this as roof 01. For the material index render pass. Yeah, I'm going to get some grub right now. It's going to take me about a half hour, maybe slightly longer, but I'll be back and streaming again as soon as I get back. And I greatly appreciate anyone joining me on stream this evening on the chat. There last night, the night before, we had a big crowd for a while. Big crowd, lots of chatting. Couldn't keep up with it. It was awesome. So thank you very much, YouTube. I'm going to stop for maybe about a half hour, like I say, 45 minutes, and keep an eye out for another notification when I'm streaming again. Picking up where I left off over here in Blender. Getting some of this done. I'm going to have to do a little bit of reading in my own manual because I haven't done this since Blender 2.6 probably. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.